Welcome to Best of Reddit. Be sure to subscribe as we upload new content daily. Our first ProRevenge story today is titled, Roommate Thought She Was Sneaky. Ended up owing me $400 and got suspended. So, this happened my second semester dorming at my college campus. I had met my roommate at orientation and could kind of already tell she was going to be a pain in my butt. And I was right about that. I had planned on moving rooms to be closer to some friends the next semester. But, let me get to the story that led to my revenge. On our campus you had to pay for meals using your student ID, which had a certain amount of money on it each semester. You could also use an app that you put your name and ID info into and it makes it easier to pay. But, the name and ID must match for it to work, which will be important later. Any funds from the fall semester would roll over into the spring. But, then at the end of spring it would just expire. Because of this, and because I only ate once or twice a day, I had a ton saved up on my card. My roommate, on the other hand, did not. So, I offered to pay for some of her meals from time to time in trade of her picking up the food for us. Which involved her using my card twice in person and then she'd return it. Then, one day, I noticed on my app that my card was being charged even when I was not ordering food. And not just a meal, like a meal for several people. This meant that whoever was ordering, I wonder who, either had to have stolen my ID card, which I had in my pocket when I got the charge, or was impersonating my info in the app, which are both big no-nos on my campus. I was quick to put two and two together and was pretty peeved. I was initially going to confront her on it, but decided to formulate a plan instead. That day I went and ordered a second ID card for $25 to use for later, as it took a couple of weeks to get the new one. I let her charge several things to my card over a good 2 weeks. For her and her friends. And she wasn't very good at hiding it either, as they would come to our dorm and eat. While I just screenshot and sent emails to the support team of the app about the charges, knowing nothing would get done until I contacted someone in person. And one day it got even better, as you can buy groceries with the card off campus as well. She decided to pay for alcohol with my card, which doesn't get pinged as an issue on my card due to me being over 21, but she was only 19. Not sure how she got it, but it was just the thing to finally act on my plan. I put my best sad face on and contacted the head of campus living and head of my dorm about the charges on my account. I dropped some hints that it could be my roommate and mentioned I got a new ID and asked what I should do. I was told to order a new card, and once I got it, to deactivate my current ID and use the new one for purchases now, making my old ID have a balance of $0 and also to ping if someone uses it to buy anything. They also told me they would be visiting my dorm to discuss the issue with my roommate. I accepted that and waited. They sent the confirmation email that they would be visiting and I just decided to add more fuel to the fire. My roommate was groaning about not having the funds for food in front of me in our dorm. I told her I really couldn't help her as I was running low on funds, and she kind of just laughed it off and left the room to probably go use my old ID. I deactivated my first card right after she left, and surprise surprise, she used my info to pay. Except when she tried to pay for her and her friends this time, it was declined and it pinged that my ID was used. Campus security was called and she was escorted back to our dorm. Pretty much perfect timing for our meeting with campus living. She was scared crapless when they came to the dorm to talk and look through her stuff. On her phone, still logged into the app, was my ID information and name. And in her dorm closet was a half-full bottle of cheap vodka. And on my phone was a screenshot of said unauthorized vodka purchase. In the end she was forced to pay me back all the funds she used, in cash, reported for underage drinking, which automatically suspends you from campus living for at least a year, and would have on her record that she performed identity theft, which I also could have charged her for out of school. In the end, I got to have my own dorm for the remainder of that semester and even part of the semester after, because it wasn't put as an available room for new dormers. I did get all my money back from her parents, who were so embarrassed and apologized profusely. And when she did eventually come back to campus, no one wanted to dorm with her because they knew she had stolen her roommate's ID. I think in the end she rented off campus. Next up we have a story of revenge called, My Uncle Took Revenge on Behalf of My Parents. As the title gives away, this didn't happen to me, but is the story of how my uncle avenged my parents. My parents had me when they were plenty young. They were not teens anymore but had barely left that age bracket. My mom and dad met in college. That was also when they had me. So while my parents were in their courses, I mostly stayed with my grandparents. The whole family lives in the same area. And the college was not that far away. My parents were still young and liked to go out with friends on occasion. When the following happened, I was a few years old. On occasion, they frequented a bar. A drunk guy there groped my mom and did not take a no as a no. My dad intervened and stopped the guy. And half an hour later all seemed forgotten. The music was loud, the bar crowded, and then someone in the crowd hit my dad with an empty glass pitcher square in the face. He was bleeding profusely and collapsed. But in the press, semi-darkness and over the music no one knew who did it. My dad got taken to the hospital. He had a broken nose and a heavy concussion. He also couldn't see who had attacked him, and his memory between the alcohol and being hit in the head was also very fuzzy. Of course, they had considered the guy who had harassed my mom, but they didn't know him, nor did they see him anywhere leading up to the moment. Let alone have any evidence. So they pressed charges against unknown. But there was virtually nothing anyone could do. But then a few days later the piece of crap that had harassed my mom approached her on campus. Turns out he was in the same college as my parents. He made a few veiled comments and left little doubt that it had been him that hit my dad in the face. And the piece of garbage let my mom know that my dad next time should mind his manners. And that the little touching he had done didn't hurt anyone and wasn't that bad. And if he wanted to do it again, he would, and maybe more. And then the piece of crap went on his merry way. My mom was horrified, of course. She went home and told my grandparents, my dad, his parents. But no one could do anything. It was a he said, she said deal after all. And my mom hadn't even gotten the guy's name. My mom cried a lot at that time and didn't know what to do. She also was afraid of going to classes or out alone. I honestly only remember that time very scarcely. I was just a little kid. But I can remember my dad in the hospital and with his broken nose. And my mom crying a lot. My dad, of course, was just as angry and humiliated as my mom. No one knew what to do. And everyone was treading on eggshells around each other. But that is where my uncle enters the stage. My uncle, my mom's brother, lived on the other side of the country. He was a private investigator. And he was, of course, the last to hear the full story. But the moment he heard someone had threatened his little sister, he was on his way home. After hearing the full story, my uncle knew it would likely be hard to get the guy on the harassment, the assault, or the threats. Having no evidence. My uncle had my mom point the guy out from afar on campus. It took a few days to find him. But then my uncle started to stalk that piece of human filth. My uncle took sick days, all his vacation, and invested every second possible to find out everything about the harasser. My uncle even approached the pig in another bar and became drinking buddies with him. Over several weeks my uncle had uncovered all manners of illicit behavior. Possession, consumption, and distribution of drugs. Theft. And a few other misdemeanors and small-time stuff. And my uncle could have put him away for that. But my uncle always said when asked about that if he sent the butthole to prison, it would be for molesting my mom and hurting my dad. And that is what he did. One night while out with his new buddy, drinking, my uncle got the idiot drunk and they landed in my uncle's motel room. He got the harasser to incriminate himself on video, rattling off a list of illegal crap he was up to. My uncle had, of course, pretended to be a crook too. Among the stories Butthole told was the story of how he groped some chick and brained her dude with a pitcher of beer. Now, something needs to be said. In my country, of course, recording someone in secret is illegal, and under some conditions, like if the police does it, it is not a permissible piece of evidence in court. But as a private investigator, my uncle knew that laws for that exactly. But paradoxically, the situation is different if it is not only audio but also video. And my uncle had the butthole on camera confessing. The next day my uncle turned himself into the police, with all his collected evidence. Because secretly filming people was still a crime. Though the video could be used as evidence in court, as my uncle was not affiliated with the police or any other governmental agency. When the criminal trial and the civil trial were over, the butthole got 6 years in prison and had to pay damages to my mom and dad. And my uncle got slapped with the equivalent of a $2,000 fine for secretly filming the butthole. Money well